My name is Aisha, and I've always been the quiet, reflective type, while the other kids in the neighborhood raced through the streets playing tag, scaling tree trunks with wild abandon, and letting their laughter echo so loudly it seemed to dance across the wind. I preferred a different world. You'd often find me nestled under the sprawling mango tree, my nose buried in a book, the vibrant noise of life around me fading into a gentle hum. My universe was calm, orderly, and delightfully predictable, a sanctuary I cherished. I grew up in a small, tightly knit town in Africa, the kind of place where your business wasn't just your own, it was practically public property. News traveled faster than the wind. If I so much as sneezed in the morning, by noon, vendors in the market would call out, "Aisha, are you feeling better now?" It wasn't invasive. It was just the rhythm of life in our community, a blend of love, curiosity, and unyielding familiarity. My parents, Ibrahim and Fatima, were the twin pillars anchoring my little world. My father was a man of unwavering discipline and faith, the sort who could recite prayers with a fluency that seemed almost divine. His presence alone commanded respect. Even the birds seemed to chirp more softly when he was near. Once, he caught me lost in a daydream while I was supposed to be cleaning. His voice, firm but not unkind, broke through my thoughts. "Aisha, the only time you should be dreaming like that is when you're asleep." It was a lesson wrapped in his own brand of tough love. My mother, in contrast, was a warm balm to my father's strictness. Fatima had the kind of patience that could weather any storm. She was always humming softly as she worked, her hands tirelessly creating something. Whether it was a perfect batch of her famous bean cakes or stitching a neighbor's torn garment, her culinary creations were the pride of the town. People traveled from neighboring villages just to taste her bean cakes, and I secretly suspected she was more beloved than the town chief. Life in our house was simple but structured, governed by an unspoken rulebook my parents had written through years of tradition. There was a rule for everything: the time to wake up, the precise way to greet guests, even how to chew your food. "Aisha," my father would remind me, "chew like a lady, not a goat." My younger siblings would stifle their giggles behind their hands, but I always nodded earnestly, determined not to disappoint him. Yet, for all the rules, our home was filled with a unique kind of love. My father's discipline shaped my sense of responsibility, while my mother's unwavering kindness taught me the beauty of small joys. Together, they were molding me into someone who valued respect, grace, and quiet strength, qualities I didn't fully appreciate until much later in life. By the time I reached 27, I thought I had my life mapped out, or at least close enough. Except for one glaring, undeniable detail: I was still a virgin. Oh, and unmarried, too. In a town like ours, this wasn't just a personal milestone I hadn't reached. It was practically a community event. If marriage was a train, mine seemed stuck at a station, with no conductor in sight. For many, this would have been an embarrassment, a cause for whispered pity. For me, it was a deliberate choice, a promise I had made to myself and to God to wait until marriage. I wasn't ashamed of it, though the town's gossip spun their narratives. In a place where a sneeze could inspire rumors of witchcraft, my love life or lack thereof was a goldmine for speculation. Some said I was too picky. Others joked that I was holding out for a prince. Even my closest friends teased me. "Aisha," they'd say, "you're like a priceless artifact in a museum, admired but untouched." But as the years slipped by, even my humor about the situation began to waver. I couldn't help but wonder if my wedding day was as mythical as a unicorn or a calorie-free donut. The questions at social gatherings didn't help either. "Aisha," an auntie would whisper conspiratorially, her head wrap swaying like a theatrical prop, "why are you still single? Don't you know time waits for no one?" Uncle Dannymere would chime in, his voice carrying a mix of concern and judgment. "At your age, your mother already had 3 children. What are you waiting for? A miracle." Then came the wedding invitation that changed everything. Kay, my childhood best friend, the girl who once climbed a mango tree in her Sunday dress just to prove she could, was getting married. Kay, of all people, she who had dared to eat 3 bowls of pepper soup in a reckless food challenge and paid the price with tears streaming down her face, gulping water like a desert traveler. When her glittering invitation arrived, I stared at it for what felt like hours. Weddings in our town were no small affair. They were grand spectacles that blended joy and interrogation into a single event. I could already picture the crowd, relatives and strangers alike, peppering me with questions and matchmaking attempts. My mother, with her penchant for oversharing, would probably introduce me to every eligible bachelor within a mile radius, proudly declaring, "This is my daughter, Aisha. Can you believe she's still a virgin?" And yet, despite my hesitations, I knew I couldn't miss Kay's wedding. She had been my partner in childhood mischief, the sister I chose. Attending wasn't just about celebrating her. It was about stepping into the chaos, facing the questions, and maybe, just maybe, finding a moment of unexpected joy amidst it all. As I packed my things for the journey, I reminded myself that life, like weddings, often had a way of surprising you when you least expected it. Little did I know, this wedding would not just be an ordinary celebration, but the beginning of a profound change in my life in ways I could never have anticipated. It was one of those days that start with the promise of joy and end with a story you'll tell for years. The venue looked like a dream straight out of a romantic movie. Every detail seemed to whisper of magic and love. The decorations shimmered under the soft glow of fairy lights, casting a warm, enchanting ambience. The air was filled with the tantalizing aroma of jollof rice, roasted meats, and freshly baked pastries. Everywhere I looked, people were laughing, dancing, and creating memories. The bride and groom, Kay and her partner, were the stars of the evening, their happiness shining brighter than the chandeliers. Kay was radiant, her laughter ringing out like a melody that could warm even the coldest heart. Watching her, I felt a surge of pride and joy for my dear friend, who deserved every bit of this happiness. As I mingled with the other guests, enjoying the small chops and sipping a refreshing glass of juice, a strange wave of emotion washed over me, a mixture of longing and wistfulness. It hit me out of nowhere. Would I ever have a day like this? A day where I would be the center of attention, surrounded by love and celebration? I pictured myself in a dress so white and dazzling that it could outshine the sun, and the thought brought a bittersweet smile to my face. But before I could let the melancholy seep too deeply into my mood, the universe decided to throw a curveball. I noticed him before he noticed me. Adam, even in a crowd full of elegantly dressed guests, he stood out like a beacon, tall and striking, with an effortless confidence that made him seem larger than life. He had a smile so dazzling it could light up an entire city. Watching him navigate the crowd with ease, greeting people, sharing jokes, and commanding attention without trying, I couldn't help but feel drawn to him. It was as if the whole room faded into the background, leaving just him in focus. My heart skipped a beat when our eyes finally met, and in that moment, everything else ceased to matter. He started walking toward me, and I felt my mind racing to keep up. Act natural, Aisha. I thought to myself, don't trip, don't spill your drink, and for heaven's sake, don't make a fool of yourself. And then, before I knew it, he was there, standing right in front of me. "You must be Aisha," he said, his voice warm and inviting, accompanied by that disarming smile of his. "Kay told me a lot about you," he continued, and I managed to respond with a nervous laugh. "I hope she didn't tell you anything too embarrassing," I said, trying to sound casual. "I swear half of what she says is exaggerated." He chuckled, a deep, rich sound that instantly put me at ease. From that moment, it felt as though the world around us had melted away, leaving just the two of us in our own little bubble. We talked about everything: my life, my dreams, even my quirky love for fried plantains, which he wholeheartedly approved of. It was rare to meet someone who listened so intently, who seemed genuinely interested in the little things that made me, me. When he laughed at one of my jokes, a silly one, no less, I felt an unexpected rush of happiness, as if I had unlocked a secret treasure. His laughter was infectious, and soon we were both giggling like old friends. Then, without warning, he pulled me into a hug. a gesture so sudden yet so sincere that it took me a moment to react. As his arms enveloped me, I felt a warmth that seemed to reach straight to my soul. "You're really something special, Aisha," he said softly, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that left me breathless. For the first time in years, I felt a spark, an indescribable flutter in my chest that hinted at possibilities I hadn't dared to imagine. From that evening on, Adam became a constant presence in my life. Our conversations, which started as light-hearted exchanges, soon grew deeper and more meaningful. He had a knack for making me laugh, even about the most mundane things. I found myself sharing parts of me I rarely revealed to others, my childhood fears, my aspirations, and the moments that had shaped me. He listened with an attentiveness that made me feel truly seen. One day, he invited me over to his place, and though it seemed casual to him, it felt monumental to me. His home, much like his personality, was warm and inviting. That evening, we talked, laughed, and even danced in his living room like carefree teenagers at a prom. It was during these moments of unguarded joy that I realized how deeply I had come to care for him. Then, on my 28th birthday, Adam surprised me in a way that would change everything. Dressed impeccably, he picked me up with a mischievous grin, refusing to reveal where we were going. After a scenic drive filled with playful banter, we arrived at a garden that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale. Twinkling lights, vibrant flowers, and the soft hum of music created an atmosphere so magical it took my breath away. As we strolled hand in hand, Adam suddenly stopped, turning to face me with a seriousness that made my heart race. Then, to my astonishment, he dropped to one knee. In that moment, everything else faded. The world stood still as he began to speak words that would forever be etched in my memory. "Aisha," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "you've shown me what it means to love, to believe in something greater than myself. You're my inspiration, my partner, my everything." I stood frozen, staring at him, my lips parted in disbelief, tears already welling up, threatening to spill over. He reached into his pocket with a slightly nervous smile, and when he pulled out a small velvet box, the world around me seemed to fade. My heart raced as the realization dawned. This was it, the moment I had dreamed of. "Aisha," he began softly, his voice steady yet full of emotion. He opened the box to reveal a ring so dazzling it seemed to hold the light of 1,000 stars. I gasped, my hands flying to my face as the tears spilled over. "Will you marry me?" For what felt like an eternity, I was paralyzed, unable to move, unable to speak. My mind screamed, "Say yes, say something." But all I could do was stand there, tears streaming down my cheeks in a torrent of joy and disbelief. Finally, I managed to nod, my voice cracking as I choked out, "Yes, Adam, yes." He slid the ring onto my trembling finger, and I couldn't stop staring at it. The way it sparkled, it was as if it could light the darkest night or guide lost ships home. Adam stood, pulling me into a hug so tight it felt as if he were trying to merge our souls. True to his playful nature, he whispered, "So, should I call you fiancé or just future boss of my life?" I burst into laughter through my tears, a sound that echoed pure happiness. "Definitely future boss," I replied, still laughing. It was the happiest, most magical moment of my life, surrounded by twinkling fairy lights and fragrant blooms. I couldn't believe this was my story. Adam had turned my birthday into the beginning of forever, and I couldn't wait to embark on every adventure life had in store for us. Our wedding day felt like stepping into a fairy tale. It was a symphony of love, laughter, and sheer magic. A day that made me constantly ask myself, is this really happening? As I walked down the aisle, arm in arm with my father, my heart swelled with a mix of joy and nerves. The church was filled with family and friends, their faces glowing with smiles, some already dabbing at tears they hadn't bothered to hide. "Don't trip, Aisha. Walk slowly," my father whispered, trying to sound composed, though I caught the tremor of emotion in his voice. His words, typical dad, made me smile even wider. My dress shimmered with every step, the delicate beads catching the sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows. The veil trailed behind me like a vision from a storybook, and the scent of fresh flowers filled the air as a soft hymn played in the background. But it was Adam who stole my breath. Standing at the altar, he looked like he had walked straight out of a romance novel. His suit was impeccable, but it was his smile radiant, tender, and filled with love that captivated me. His eyes, slightly glossy, held a mixture of joy and the faintest hint of a plea not to cry. Spoiler alert, he cried anyway. When I finally reached him, he took my hands, and in that moment, the world disappeared. "You're beautiful," he whispered, his voice shaking with emotion. The ceremony was nearly perfect, save for the flower girl tripping and spilling all her petals in one go, and an uncle sneezing so loudly that even the pastor had to pause. But those little imperfections made the day uniquely ours. A tapestry woven with love, humor, and memories to cherish forever. When it was time for our vows, my voice wobbled like jelly. "Adam," I began, tears brimming in my eyes, "you are my answered prayer, my best friend, and the one who made all the waiting worthwhile." The room erupted with cheers, ululations, and whistles as we said, "I do." Adam leaned in for our first kiss as husband and wife, and for a blissful moment, it was as if time stood still. The reception was a carnival of joy. Aunties danced with wild abandon, uncles argued over their best moves, and the kids turned the dance floor into their battleground. Adam and I cut the cake, giggling like schoolchildren when he smeared icing on my nose. It was pure, unfiltered bliss. Fast forward to today, and life has only grown sweeter. Just a few months after the wedding, I found myself holding a tiny stick with 2 pink lines. "Adam," I screamed, running to him. His eyes widened before he broke into the biggest grin. "Twins," he declared dramatically. "I just know it'll be twins." And he was right. 9 months later, we welcomed 2 beautiful boys into the world. Sleepless nights and endless diaper changes became our new normal. But so did baby giggles, tiny milestones, and a house filled with love and chaos. Looking back, every doubt, every lonely night, and every prayer led me here, to my perfect love story, my beautiful family, and my happily ever after. Waiting until 27 wasn't a burden. It was a blessing, because it brought me the life I was always meant to live. Thank you for taking the time to watch our videos, and especially subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. Our channel will always update interesting content. Thank you and see you in the next videos.